Alright, so I just did a video about how words represent the past and sound represents the present. And when I finished, I kind of like looked at the actual script again. So I'm going to read it. Words represent the past, sound represents the present. Feel a live experience of vibration. And then I write in quotes, in brackets, sorry, the eternal sound of the cosmos. You see it at the bottom, the eternal sound of the cosmos. And as I was explaining how when you don't speak for a bit, what actually happens is you're kind of like your thoughts process themselves, they compartmentalize in different places, and eventually they organize in a way where it's like relevant, irrelevant versus relevant, irrelevant, and then deeper, like relevant now, relevant later, relevant for the past, process needs processing. It's a full on structure, man. And we all think this way. I'm not special. We just never actually pay attention to these kinds of things, right? I was having a conversation with a guy the other day, and it was like, I see the difference is that I think this way, and I go like, we all think the same because thinking requires logic. It's an abstract form of reasoning, right? It's thinking. And the truth is, we do not really think because the mind does its thing using logic because that's the only way. That's the abstract has to be constructed from something that makes sense, especially to us. Like I can't just make random sounds and expect you to understand me. There is a structure, there's a reason behind, there's a logic. And even if I don't understand the core, if I know how to do it, that means at one point it clicked, and that click is the logical reasoning behind it. And so my conversation with him was like, we all think the same way because we're all using logic. The only difference is how we perceive the world, our perception of the world. And it's funny because like the more you pay attention to that perception changes. Remember the relationships because instead of looking at whatever's in front of us, look at your relationship with it. And it's like I'm looking at something and something actually looks a certain kind of way, and my relationship with it kind of like is affected by how I'm looking at it. And as my relationship with it kind of like is experienced, then I basically change. And then when I change because of that experience, then the way I'm looking at it changes. And then because that changed, the way I'm looking at it changed, and the relationship changed. And because the relationship changed, I changed. And that's that like kind of like trilogy, the trishul. I feel that is the true meaning of the Vajra. The Vajra is the electrical, basically, electrical, what do you call it? It's from the Vajra, Hindu god. It's the weapon. The Vajra is a legendary and ritualistic tool symbolizing the properties of a diamond and the thunderbolt. But it's basically three from the top and three from the bottom. So as above, so is beyond kind of thing. Like the root which is inside, the three parts that are inside, and the three parts that are outside. And there's my relationship with the world and my relationship with myself that kind of dictates the world. Anyways, so I was looking at it and I was like, okay, so I explained the story and how sound works and how basically there's like that when you're in silence, you're kind of hearing your voice. And then it hit me the minute I finished the video because who we are is this expression of life, correct? So ultimately, if the voice that's left after everything else is settled, there's still that one voice that represents you now. And here I was like the eternal sound of the cosmos because like it's the vibration, right? So like there's that thing that keeps us alive. There's that thing that keeps us connected to this body. There's that thing that allows us to keep moving, to keep interacting. That thing that has been evolving for thousands and millions of years until we reach this point where I can actually where there are laptops and like there's technology and we have become this creative. There's that thing, and I strongly believe that's the connection we have to the universe, and that's basically the structure that allows us to not structure. I don't know if it's a structure, man, but there's that like humming in your head. The minute you can, you're like when everything else clears, there's that one voice that's the present you that's there. And it's funny because ultimately you, as in Tariq, me, could have a conversation. I'm telling you, like, truthfully, as based on my experience, because when you're focused and you know what you're thinking about, or when you know what thoughts are in your head, and you're kind of only considering one thing and looking at one thing and focused on one thing and thinking of one thing, you're not really just looking at your thoughts. There is a back and forth between you and them. And so, in a way, your thoughts become the representation of you, of me, basically. My thoughts become the representation of me at that point, because I'm the one absorbing from the present moment and using the words and that I have conducted and created to describe the experience or the thing I'm trying to do, trying to move towards. Whilst the response, that creativity, that different options that come around is basically the single vibration that connects us all, consciousness. That's where basically the well of consciousness is expanding and the universe is practically speaking to us, or God is practically speaking to us. So I felt I have to do a different video or a part two, because this, from a continuation perspective, when you speak, you're translating what's in your head, but where does what is in your head come from? And there's a representation, I've described it once before, where you're connecting your mind, you're connected to your mind, and you're connected to this world. And then basically, your mind expresses, you're connected to your reality through your mind, and you're connected to this world through you, through the person, the body, the right, like I'm making a voice right now, I'm moving my hand right now, I'm looking all over the place right now. Like that's me. But I am kind of like beyond that veil. I am like a representation that's kind of giving this me and giving my mind the energy. So, so fairly enough, what we do most of the time is we talk, and we don't give ourselves the time or the silence necessary for our thoughts to kind of like dissipate and contextualize and kind of like be formatted or be restructured. And when I say formatted, that means like sometimes you have a whole lot of things that could be basically joined under one thing and organized. Like formatted is literally like something that's big becomes small. And ultimately, that's what our mind does. Because if you're speaking to a doctor that consumed hundreds of books throughout his life to become a doctor, when you're speaking to him, he can speak about any of these books. Like all of these books were kind of like, and it's not like all he sees in this world is these books. They kind of like are formatted somewhere in his head, where the minute he wants them, they come out. So that's my 2 cents is basically like understand. But truthfully, the sound is connecting me to this world. But in my head, what connects me to my mind is basically the history I have that has been created through words that I have. But just because now I'm in the practice of sounding them in order for me to come to those realizations. And now my head is kind of like, oh, okay. But this is basically, I'm using the real world as a tool to self-reflect on how my mind is approaching the reality I want out of it. I want to express. With silence, you'll be able to feel the live experience of the whole, like, of your, basically, like, the rhythm that's that responds to you anytime you ask a question. That's connecting you to beyond where we are. I think it's always interesting to realize that sound is a tool, our body is a tool, our existence, the way we see it, is this tool for expression. Thank you guys. Love you.